Hello.
Good morning.
Good morning, everybody. Let me make this where we can see the comments. So, thought we would come on here today and talk about something that, well, we are dealing with on a regular basis right now, and all the other agents in the area are as well. We're going to talk about multiple offers in a seller's market.
It's crazy.
Yeah, so this is meant for, anybody who is thinking about being a buyer in this market, but then also agents who are competing in multiple offers. I'm hoping to maybe provide some strategies to help you to be able to better compete. So I just kind of want to talk about, well, the market, right? Okay, so right now we are in an extreme seller's market. This has been happening all over the country. And there are other areas that it's a lot worse than it is here. I will say that it seems like as time moves on, it's becoming more and more and more so here. There are strategies that have been used in other cities that we haven't really had to, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to get to a place where this summer, if our inventory is still super low and we still have a ton of buyers, I could see some of those other strategies being implemented. So I thought I'd kind of talk about that. Okay, so I think the most important thing to talk about first is being ready. Be ready before you go enter the market.
Which means have your pre-approval,
Yes.
have the lender, have all of that ready to go. Your closing costs.
Yes.
Be aware of all the fees that are going to be included in submitting an offer.
You really need to get with an agent and an agent that has great lender recommendations. This is not the time to go online and get your quick and pre-approval. And I'm not saying that they can't close transactions and that, maybe at the end of the day you could save some money in working with some of these online lenders. But this is really not the time for that. Whenever it comes to lenders, I will say that you get what you pay for. And I can tell you that listing agents are really preferring to see local lenders with great reputations so that they know that it's going to be an easier process for their client. So that is an important part of being able to compete in this market. So yeah, I would definitely talk to an agent and then take their recommendation on who they think that you should work with in order to get your loan. I would make sure that that pre-approval is in hand. You may have a house that you need to sell. So I would say in this market, you really need to talk to an agent about the strategies that you can use to be able to possibly purchase before you sell. There's actually been no better time to do that than now. I really feel like I can assure my clients more than anything at this point that if they were to get qualified to carry both mortgages and go and lay in wait for the right property, because there is not a lot to choose from, to be able to lay in wait for the right property, and then once it comes along to be able to pounce on that and then turn around and sell their home on the back end, I feel like I can assure them at this time more than I've ever been able to before. And we've done this for years anyway, I will say. But now more than ever, I can say, don't worry, we're going to be able to sell the house on the back end, unless there's some sort of extenuating circumstances with your particular property that might change things. But if you're talking about, something that's here in our neighborhood, if you're in Eagle Springs or, a great neighborhood that's local to here, we're not going to have problems selling your house on the back end. So I would say work all that out before you go enter the market to purchase. That's a big, big deal. And just have a strategy in place. Because if you're competing in multiple offers and you have a contingency, you're going to have a much harder time being able to secure the deal, because contingencies are definitely something that it's an additional risk for the seller. Because if that transaction doesn't go through, then that affects this one. So if they're looking at multiple offers and they have others that don't have the contingency, they are going to be more likely to go with one of the other offers. So I just kind of want to go through some different tips here. So how to win. I will say you got to get in fast. You need to be, you and your agent need to be continuously looking at what hits the market. So that means that you need to be set up on a search where as soon as the agent puts a listing into the MLS, you are sent an email. We can't, we're not constantly on the MLS searching. Okay. We're off doing other appointments and things. You need to know immediately when a property hits the market. A couple of weeks ago, I got a text from my client at, I think it was like 4:30 in the afternoon. And they said, this house just hit the market within the last 30 minutes. So I open it up, I look at it, I realize that I've got, 45 minutes before my next appointment. I said, meet me there right now. It was vacant. Meet me there right now. So we ran over, we saw the house within an hour of it hitting the MLS. Walked in, knew it was the one. So, we were already prepared. We had been looking. They had a pre-approval with the best local lender that I know. And so they were absolutely ready to roll. So now we knew it was a Friday evening. And I knew, I'm like, they're going to end up taking showings throughout the weekend. They're going to see what the best that they can get is. And then, they're going to let us know, Sunday, Monday, what their decision is. And it's going to be a couple of days, which is not fun. It's not fun for anybody. But, it matched, thankfully. It checked off all the boxes. I will say, you still need to make sure it checks off all the boxes, y'all. Don't go buy a property you hate because of the way the market is.
Right.
You need to make sure that you love it because you're going to be buying on a high. You're going to probably pay more than you normally would. And so if that's the case, you need to love it enough to stay there for a while. So it is super important. Good morning, everybody. Hi, Mama. Hi, Teresa. Hey, Brittany K. Off subject with that tile on those cabinets.
It really is.
Thank you. I love my kitchen. Yes. Thanks so much. Good morning, Wendy. Okay, so you just need to be prepared. You need to get in fast. Not only do you need to get in fast, but you need to get that offer in fast. Even though I knew that they weren't going to respond to us for a couple of days, I wanted that agent to know how serious I was. So we wrote the offer that night and got it in. And whenever you write an offer, I will say that in your haste, don't just throw together something that looks awful.
Right, for other agents, yes. We're talking about other agents.
Yeah.
Make sure it's a clean offer. It's because clean. It's such a turnoff. It's like
it totally is. Well, it sets the tone.
Right. And then you don't know how they're going to handle the rest of the transaction if they can't even write the offer properly. Right.
Yes.
So yeah.
So make sure.
And don't just send it. Don't just email it. Like I like to pick up the phone and call it.
Yeah, you need to.
I'm like, I want to talk to you about my clients. I want to talk to you about the offer. I want to talk to you.
Exactly.
So don't just send them.
No. Yes. You need to try to communicate. And I will say that, not all agents are communicative. In this market, you're going to have some listing agents that are just like,
right.
I'll see your offer along with all of the others, and they put up a wall. But here's the thing, you still need to write the cleanest offer possible because no matter what their way of handling things is, in order to really appropriately represent your client, you have got to get in there, make it as clean as possible, and be as aggressive as possible because that's what you're doing for them, and it doesn't have anything to do with that listing agent. But what you absolutely need to do is try to reach out to that listing agent to gather some pertinent information. You need to get disclosures if they're not online. You need to have exclusions. You need to know what their client is wanting to take with that property. And it could be some things that your client would consider to be important. You need to know ahead of time that that's the case. And it may be that, they haven't really talked to their client about the exclusions yet. You don't really kind of know where things are, but you need to open up that conversation so that you're sure that you're not fighting about little things later. That is not fun.
Also leasebacks.
Yeah.
Yes.
Leasebacks. Timing's a big deal. Timing is a huge deal. Yeah. So if it's vacant, then you can rest assured that they want to close as soon as possible. So call your lender and say, what is the soonest that you can close this? And then write the contract based upon that. Don't short them, because what you don't want is for it to end up bumping back later. You need to legitimately know when they can close the transaction and write it into the contract that way. If someone else writes in something shorter and the lender's able to do something different, or if they have cash or whatever, you can't really compete with that. You need to do what the best possible scenario is that you can put together for your clients. So you need to talk to the lender and make sure that they can, what timing that they can work with. Sometimes if it's occupied, you definitely want to know, are these people going to turn around and go try to buy something? Is there anything that we can do? If you have a client that's like month to month on a lease, or something like that, and they've got time and they can be flexible, that can be something that can be used to help win. So you can say, listen, hey, do they need to go look for another house? Do we need to provide a longer close because of it? Do they need a lease back on the back end in order to be able to move? What can we do to make this as easy as possible for your clients? Because that also plays into it. Sometimes you may not necessarily win on price, but you can win on terms. And so whenever you're collecting all this information, you just need to be able to put it together in the best possible way that your clients in their particular situation can help matters.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really important point, Ginger, is it isn't always about the money. I mean, there have been several times that we have won and it wasn't because we came in the highest.
Right. So as a buyer, don't not do it.
Yeah.
Don't hear the words, we're in multiple offers, and shut down.
Right.
Just put together what the best thing that you can put together is. And at the end of the day, you did the best you could. And if they end up choosing someone else, I mean, it could end up falling out and they come back to you anyway.
That's right.
Or, that's not your house. Right. That's somebody else's house, and your house is out there. So don't be discouraged. Don't give up if you lose a couple of times. Just make sure you're working, with somebody who helps you put together your best possible proposition for a particular home. Let's see here. Part of writing a clean offer is making sure that you're filling out every single open space in that contract. Don't send over something that doesn't have all the terms. Y'all, I received 5 offers on a listing that I had a little over a week ago. And one of those offers, the person, they gave me like the main part of the contract, the 1 to 4, but there were nothing else. It was that and the pre-approval letter. And now, mind you, whenever I looked at the net, I could tell that they weren't necessarily the ones that were going to win anyway. But, that sends up so many red flags. I'm like, this person doesn't know how to adequately write a contract. So that's kind of an extreme example, and he wanted to know why they didn't win. And I said, well, you didn't write a complete contract, and he's new. He's new. And I told him he needed to go sit down with a mentor and have them coach him through it, because such a huge disadvantage for his client to not be able to put in a full offer. So experience is a big deal.
I saw that funny meme where they're like, just sent the blank contract.
What was that? Oh, yeah.
That was hilarious.
Yeah. They're like, I'm sorry, but I just received this contract and it's blank with their initials. And it's like, oh, I know, we're just sick of writing offers. Just write in whatever the seller needs and let's move on. We're tired of competing.
I laughed really hard.
It's pretty funny, and it's true. It does get that way sometimes. Yep. And listen, I'm not knocking new agents, y'all. We all started somewhere.
Yeah, and just have somebody look it over.
Contrary to what people may believe, you actually don't learn how to do your job in real estate school.
No, you don't, for sure.
You don't. Yeah. You learn how to do your job by working, and that's a scary thing whenever you're talking about people's largest investment. So it's incredibly important to have a mentor. So, I'm not knocking that. It's just, it can put people at a disadvantage if you don't know what you're doing. Okay. So every blank, fill out every blank. There's a place that calls for agent information. Go to the Trek website and look up the license numbers. Yeah, it's an extra step. And yeah, the agent could have built that into the listing somehow. I get that. But do it anyway, because it helps you look like you are going to be easy to work with. And that also plays into things whenever it's not always about cash or terms. Or sometimes you have 3 offers with all the same cash, all the same terms, all of the same everything. And they're like, well, which one do we pick?
Mm-hmm.
And I, as an agent, say, well, this lender seems like they really know what they're doing. I called them all. This one answered the phone, was happy to discuss with me their process, their level of communication. And the agent wrote up a really clean offer and seems to know what they're doing. It plays into it. It just does. It's huge. Okay, so now we're going to talk about terms a little bit and pricing and all that. You got to give your highest and best the first time. And I will say, like, I've worked with, this is a very typical way that things work with clients. And, we'll go in on the first house they want to buy that they lose out on. And they're wanting to go in a little under asking. They're like, well, I don't want to offer them their asking price. I want to negotiate a little bit. And listen, in a stable market, it's completely understandable. The best negotiation is where everyone feels like they've won. That's the best. But unfortunately, that doesn't really win in this market. So if your agent is telling you things like, you really need to try to go up over asking if you want to get this house, I think you need to listen to them if it's one that you truly want. So yeah, it's important to go in with your highest and best the absolute first time. When it comes to earnest money, typical earnest money in our area is 1%. So you want to do that as a minimum or go over. I had one recently that they did $5,000 in earnest money when 1% was probably $3,400. They did $5,000 and then they did a 5-day option period. So like they reduce the number of days on the option period. That's another way to do it. Give a little bit higher option fee. What an option period is, that's the time that you go get your inspections. The buyer has the unrestricted right to terminate for any reason during that period of time. So they try to shorten that period. Now, I will say a lot of the time we end up extending it because it is hard if it's too short to get it all done during that time. Sometimes you need a little bit more time to like look into different things and send different technicians. So it's normal for it to get bumped out. And as long as you're working with people who are reasonable on both ends, that's a normal thing to have happen. But you're letting them know you're aggressive and you're not playing around and getting those inspections scheduled,
Also with the earnest and option money, please make sure as buyers, you understand that those checks are going to get cashed. They are sitting at title, but they do clear your bank account.
They're leaving your bank.
So be sure that your buyers are aware, agents, and as a buyer, you know that money is going to.
Yeah, it's part of being prepared, is knowing what it is that it's going to cost throughout the entire transaction, not just your quote from the lender. By the way, make sure your lender gives you a quote. I don't know how many times I meet with people and they're like, I have this pre-approval letter, and I'm like, great, let's talk about what this is going to cost you. Do you have your estimate from the lender? And they're like, well, no, they just sent over a pre-approval letter. And I'm like, well, how do you know how much cash you need to close? And so I get them to go back to the lender, give them that estimate. We look at that estimate, and then we go over the other costs that are associated with the transaction that they're going to need before we get started. It's part of being prepared, because sometimes it's a matter of like, oh, I don't really have that much cash right now, but I'm going to have it in 3 weeks. Mm-hmm. Well, we need to wait 3 weeks. Yeah. Or if they're able to get, that they just need to move cash from somewhere else. Mm-hmm. Make sure that can be done before you end up in that 3-day period. Yeah. Brittany K. Martinez says, great topic, ladies. Educating and setting the right expectations up front for all parties is crucial in this market. Yes, it absolutely is. Appraisals are being delayed. Yes. Yeah, that's another thing. Once you actually win and you get started, pretty please get working with your lender immediately. That way that they can get everything, everything set up, they disclose to you, then they're able to order the appraisal. And it used to be that, you'd wait until after the option period was done because you don't know whether somebody's going to back out of a transaction, and then you'd order the appraisal. Those were the good old days. They don't exist anymore. Appraisers are crazy backed up due to refinances, and Yolanda, nobody likes surprises. I agree. They're backed up due to all the refis, all of the transactions because of the low interest rates that we've had, and it's that's what, if you hear about transactions like the closing dates bumping back and things, most of the time these days it's because of that. Either that or they're just bad lender.
Yeah.
So try to control what you can control, which means that whenever you get started during that time period, right after we execute, you got to get all of the information that the lender is asking for to them as soon as possible, or it can impact the very back end, which is not fun for anybody. Okay, so earnest money, 1% or higher, option, higher amount, fewer days, home warranty. I've actually got a funny story on this. So I have an agent contact me because we're in multiple offers on my listing. And, he's talking me up, which is what you do. He's all, Ginger, what do I need to do to win? I need you to tell me what I need to do to win. And I'm like, listen, I'm not going to tell you how you need to write up your contract. You just need to be aggressive as possible. Whatever they feel comfortable with, just send it, And he's like, but what can I do? And he's like, what do you do? And I said, well, the one that I just did, we went up over asking. We didn't ask for the seller to pay anything towards a home warranty. And he goes, oh, I think I could get my clients to agree to that. And I said, well, no. I was like, I pay for the home warranty.
That's right.
And he's like, oh, yes. I can do that. I'm like, yes, you can do that. Yes. If there are things that we can take, it's like $500, $600. At the end of the day, if you get your client under contract in the home that they want,
right. Be the hero.
Be the hero over $600.
Yes.
Come on, people.
Yeah. So don't lose the transaction.
No.
Don't leave your client's house.
Yeah.
Don't
It's just deducted from your commission. You don't even
exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So things like that, don't put in an amount for a home warranty.
Yeah.
There are, and I think that some of these other things that I'm talking about now, if we continue down the road that we're on and we truly don't have a ton of listings, we've got a lot of buyers this summer. I can see these sort of things that I'm hearing about in other markets. And you saw this in Fort Worth, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Yeah. It's happening a lot there in Austin. Like in Texas, those are the main places that these sorts of things are happening. I'm in a coaching network that has agents all across the country, and everyone's masterminding on how to win in multiple offer situations. So I'm seeing that in other areas of the country, these tactics are used. And I have not seen it really so much locally here, but I would not be surprised if that's where it's going. The seller has typical costs like the owner's title policy, and that's usually, it's based upon the sale of the home. It can be anywhere between, like $1,500 up to, $3,000 or something, right? Can the buyer pay that for the seller? Now, if you're working with someone who is doing, 3.5% down on an FHA, and they've just scraped together what they need for their closing costs so that they don't even have to ask for closing costs from the seller, that might not be the situation where you can do this sort of thing. But if you have someone who's a conventional loan, they're putting a decent amount down, they have the cash to close, in situations like that, they might be able to just go pick up that other thing. The good thing about actually having a buyer pay the owner's title policy is that it's one of the ways that you can increase the seller net without increasing the price of the property, because the property still has to appraise. Okay, so it's one of the ways that you can do that without continuing to inflate that property up over market value, because in this market we're listed on the high end of the market, particularly if you're like us and you prep listings to make sure that they look amazing. And we put a lot of work in on the front end because it's still important, because people are picky.
Yes.
And so since we do that, we list on the higher end of the market value, the range, because we've now at that point improved it to the point to where it is on that part. So whenever we have multiple offers on a listing, it could be that you're really flirting with, what could be a problematic appraisal. So that is one way to be competitive that doesn't actually increase that price up over. Okay. Let's see here. Okay. I want to bring this up because it's something that I think people have kind of always used in multiple offer situations, and it's something that we have to be careful of. Letters about your potential buyers. Yeah. Okay. So a lot of people use this tactic, and it works. It works really well. but there are problems. So, they send videos of their clients, talking about, please choose us. We're a great family. We've got this and that, and I've got these little kids and, and we just want this house because we're going to be able to do, yes.
And
they're so
them.
cute. And so sellers, a lot of the time, they know their neighbors really well. They're all like, make sure we get somebody good if you're leaving us. I mean, it's an emotional thing. It is truly not all about numbers.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's a business transaction. It's your largest investment. It's important, but there's so much emotion tied up in home sales. So it's easy to, get a letter that includes some photos and, and they're like, oh, it's a great family. Okay. Well, when you're in multiple offer situations, you have to seriously be careful that there's no fair housing violation involved in this process. There are protected classes based upon familial status, race, color, religion, national origin, sex, and disability. So these are protected classes, and we as agents have to be careful that we are not involved in something that would violate something like that. The truth is that a lot of times as agents, we don't necessarily know, how our clients are wired and what they think of people and judgment they might have towards something. And so what you don't want is you're in a multiple offer situation. Everything kind of comes down to the same, similar numbers or whatever, and they've chosen based upon something that should have been a protected class. So I'm just going to say, we have to be careful to be professionals and not do that. And if you jump on real estate boards across the country where they're talking about all this stuff, there are a lot of people who advocate for it and say, oh, it works. You need to do this. It does work. But now these days, whenever I receive these things, I talk to my clients about it and say, they've sent this letter because they want you to know how great their client is, but I cannot forward this on to you because it is this and that and the other. And the last thing that you want to do is be involved in a situation like that. And they understand. So I just wanted to address that. We have to be careful. So what it all boils down to, it is numbers, it's price, it's cost, because it's not just price. There are other terms within the contract that have different costs associated with it, and that impacts the seller's bottom line. I create a spreadsheet that shows not only pricing, but all of the terms and how all of that breaks down to their bottom line. Timing's a big deal. Money down is a big deal. I realize if you only have 3.5% down and you're doing an FHA and, you've got your money for closing and all of that, listen, you're in your particular financial situation, you're doing the best that you can. There may be situations where someone else will win because they have a conventional loan that they're putting a lot of money down. The reason that they may win over you is because if you're paying up over asking and we have appraisal issues, sometimes when there are appraisal issues, we can work that out if these people have a decent amount of cash down. It may be that, the seller doesn't have to take all of it on. We can negotiate somewhere in between, something that feels fair between the two. But we know that if they're putting the minimum amount down, that it's not as high a likelihood of being able to do that. So that would be one reason why money down can make a big difference. In other areas, they're doing escalation clauses. So and it may be that there are areas in Houston that people are doing this now. I just haven't seen it right where we're at just yet. That doesn't mean I have seen it 4 years ago. So what people do is they'll offer to pay the difference on an appraisal up to a certain amount. So they may come in and say, no, this is the house I want. I've got plenty of cash to put down, and I'm going to do whatever I need to get it. And so they could come in and offer $25,000 over asking and just to shut it down and be like, I will pay up to $25,000 over the appraisal amount. And so that's an escalation clause, and they're using it in a lot of other areas of the country. So contingencies, you just want to remove as many of the contingencies as you possibly can. In other areas of the country, people are actually removing their inspection periods. Say inspection periods, not all states have an option period. It's a little different, but they're removing their inspection period. They're saying, we'll just buy it as is. I hate all this stuff.
Yeah.
I was like, I just started sweating.
That does not.
I just want to be super clear in that I list a decent amount of homes, and obviously, it's having a seller's market's great for sellers. But I also, I like it better when it's a little more stable. I don't like for people to leave themselves so open. It's not fun. So yeah, that kind of stuff, it really stresses me out. Glad that we haven't, particularly seen a lot of that here. But that doesn't mean that we won't. It may be that people are like, I don't care. I've taken a look around. Maybe they're super handy. I mean, we might be able to walk a property and be able to feel like, okay, I'm pretty comfortable with this, but I'm not an inspector. And that doesn't mean that I wouldn't miss something. But, maybe there would be a situation that I would feel comfortable taking that risk. So it happens. Quality of lender and agent. I'm just going to come back around to, it's just super important that, you're represented by someone who represents you well.
And who is talking to you about all of the stuff that we just talked about today. If your agent isn't talking to you about earnest money and all of the different ways that we can make an offer look better, yeah, you might want to talk to a different agent.
Well, you just need to make sure that, you're working with someone who knows what they're doing, because it truly can make or break your chances. And lenders are important too. And, we here in the area, we kind of know who's good and all of that kind of stuff. So I would just say align yourself with great people who, at the end of the day, another agent is saying, listen to their client. They're saying, listen, I will tell you, I was super glad that on the my last multiple offer situation, I was relieved that out of the 5 offers I received, the one that was actually higher, and not by a lot, but higher, and looked the cleanest, was actually someone that I knew. And I said, I've done deals with them before. So that does help. Okay. So I hope we haven't totally overloaded you guys with information, but it's just so important right now. So important. And, it's not always going to be this way. It'll end up swinging back the other direction. It always does. It's cyclical. I don't want you to feel like, if you feel like this is the right time for you to move based upon your personal circumstances and, interest rates and things like that. If you feel like this is a good time for you, I don't want you to feel discouraged or, worried. You just need to have strategies.
Mm-hmm.
You need to have a plan in place.
Right. If you're able to be flexible, that's a huge deal.
And there may be that we know ways in order to allow for that. So it's worth the conversation. That's all I'm going to say. It's worth the conversation.
Definitely.
And if you are thinking about listing your home, please contact us because we need houses. We need houses to sell. Now, I've got a decent amount of listings coming. That doesn't look like that's changed from last year. So that's a good thing. I mean, I know that we have probably about the same number of listings right now coming up as we did this time last year, if not maybe even a little bit more. So that's all positive. But if you're considering moving, and listen, if you've been sitting in your house that, your kids have moved on and, they've got their own lives and you're still sitting in the big house, right? And you're thinking, I just don't know if now is a good time for me to sell this or not. Now is a good time.
It is.
You're not going to get more than what you can, I think, at this point. So you can sell on a high, and that's a big deal.
Yeah.
And if you need to downsize, then finding off-market deals is kind of a big deal right now.
Right.
If you're able to figure out from people what they have coming, or we've managed to work within the team on some things, which has been helpful. Obviously we have to inform our clients that, the difference between selling before you hit the market and actually hitting the market. But there are some sellers that would prefer not to show the house.
Yeah.
So, there are situations of actually being able to work that out ahead of time. So don't be discouraged, work with great people, and you can still be very successful in this market. Okay.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah,
35 minutes.
Yeah, this was a long one.
I think I've used all my words for today.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
We're going to lunch, right?
Yeah, I'm going to
Right.
need it.
It was.
Yeah, and be sure to reach out if you have any questions.
Yes.
I know we threw a lot of information out today that you're like, what? But just reach out. We're happy
Text
to talk.
us,
Yeah,
call us,
we're happy to answer
Facebook
questions.
message.
For
We answer
sure.
all of this.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks so much, guys.
Bye.
Y'all have a beautiful day.